Hi, hello and welcome. Welcome everybody. My name is Ana Elena González Treviño, and I'm in charge of the Center for Mexican Studies, UNAM UK, of the National Autonomous University of Mexico in the United Kingdom. Let me just make sure that we are not having any problems. Okay, I think we have a few technical issues that have now been sorted out. And well, anyway, welcome everybody. And it is a great pleasure for me to introduce today Professor Carlos Miguel Valdés González, who is a dear colleague. We have been working in the internationalization mission of UNAM in different places. And today we have the great honor of having him with us to tell us about earthquakes and the future they hold in for us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about himself. He was born in Mexico City. He studied geophysical engineering at the National University of Mexico, and he did postgraduate studies for master's and PhD in geophysics at the University of Wisconsin in the USA. He works at the Department of Seismology at the Institute of Geophysics of UNAM, and he was in charge of the National Seismological Network for 2 periods. His main lines of research are the study of low magnitude earthquakes, determination of cortical structure by seismic ray tracing, volcanic seismology, and disaster risk management. He was the Director General of the National Center for Disaster Prevention in Mexico from 2014 to 2018. The mission of the center is to safeguard at all times the life, property, and infrastructure of Mexicans through the continuous management of public policies for the prevention and reduction of disaster risks, through the investigation and monitoring of disturbing phenomena, as well as educational training and the dissemination of the culture of civil protection in order to achieve a more resilient society. From 2018 to 2022, he was in charge of the Center for Mexican Studies of UNAM in Costa Rica. He is a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the Popocatépetl volcano since its inception in 1994. Carlos, you're very, very welcome. We are very pleased to have you here with us at UNAM UK, and it's over to you.
And Elena, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for your words. It's a pleasure to be here at the Center for Mexican Studies in the UK. And well, I want to just move towards the talk. There is a lot of things that I have prepared, and just let me just looking for the presentation on top.
I think on the left, abajo a la izquierda, ¿no? Maybe. No.
There we go, I think. No?
No, no, let us try again.
Let me try again. No way I can. There we go.
There we are. That's fine.
Well, thank you very much. The topic is about the earthquakes in Mexico and what to expect in the future. In these talks, these are about some of the topics that we will be covering. And the main objective is to talk about what do we need to know about the earthquakes, the place where they occur, their effects in buildings and society, and the prevention measurements to mitigate their effects. We will start this talk by asking us where, why, where, and when the earthquakes happen in our country. The question is that if there is always been earthquakes in Mexico, a lot of people ask when we have an earthquake if this phenomena is occurring more often now, and the answer is no. We want to use this this depiction of this earthquake in 1495 that was reported by the Aztecs. You're showing us that they have these events at that time. Of course, they have different type of structures, but the earthquakes accompany our planet for many years. And in order to talk very briefly about what happens and why the earthquakes occur, because that's a question that is many times put in front of us, is that inside our Earth that has about 6,400 kilometers depth, the internal core, the nucleo interno, it is really hot. It's more than 9,000 degrees. And when we have these temperatures, what we will have is that the rock is heat, its density goes down, and then it starts just moving upwards. And that's why we have this little dish where we could have water. When we start just boiling water, we realize that the water is not still. It starts just moving, and we were able to place some objects on this pan with water. We will see this circular motion that represents the convection of the rocks that are moving from the interior to the earth to the external part. Just as a comparison, this is the length of Mexico going from this part to the south. We have turned sideways Mexico, and twice that length is the distance that we will have to the internal part of the earth. So we will say that the responsible for the earthquakes in our planet, not only in Mexico, is this internal heat, and we cannot change it. We cannot make it disappear, and the effect of this heat is to move the crust, the most external part of the planet, that we call the tectonic plates. This kind of puzzle where the earthquakes and the volcanoes happen. We have just made a selection of a few of them, and it's good to know that this one, the Turkey, exactly happened 1 year and 1 day ago. Exactly in this particular date, there was a large earthquake, a 7.8, and we look backwards, and it seems to be so far. And the question is how many things we learn about that earthquake in order to avoid some damage as if they happen. But going back to Mexico, and if we ask what is the mechanism that generates the earthquake, when we look at the earthquakes, about 200 of them had occurred in Mexico, in the country, since 1900. The different colors are that the orange colors are shallow earthquakes, less than 40 kilometers in depth, and the blue ones are earthquakes that happen at depths greater than 40 kilometers, and the magnitude of these events is greater than 6.5. So we could see that they are concentrated mainly in the Pacific part of our country. And if we place also the volcanoes, we will see that they are related. When we have this interaction of these plates, there will be also heat release that will melt part of the rock that will produce the volcanoes, and we will have them very close. And that translates into a number of plates that Mexico is in the conjunction of 5 plates: the North American, the Pacific, the Ribera, the Coco, and the Caribbean plates. And these plates move and interact with each other, producing this type of seismicity. But what happens if we make a slides about this particular place is that the hot material is rising up in this rise in the ocean, and is pushing the oceanic crust, and is moving along the ocean floor and pushing towards the continental crust. And in this particular place where we have the F, the F, and the G letters, that is where we will have enough friction to start just producing and accumulating stress that eventually will be released as a way of an earthquake. If we try to represent what happens there, we will use this particular example, and we could see that this chair, it is being stressed, and there is little more that will take for it to break. So that's what happens in the tectonic plates. We are just pushing to the limit of the rock, and when the limit passes that boundary, then we will have this earthquake, and the plates will move, and we will start again accumulating stress in that particular area. So there is a process, a continuous process, that once the earthquake releases the energy, we will continue again. When we look at this map of the seismicity in Mexico from the National Mexican Network that is operated also by the National University, we have these numbers on top in the year 2021, 2022, and 2023, and you could see that in average, they have the similar numbers of earthquakes per day. These bars represent the million of people that live in that area, and you could see this very long bar is about 22 million people, which is the Mexico City and the surroundings in this particular region. So we are essentially almost on top of all this seismicity. So we have to understand that that's a place that we choose to live, and then that we'll have to live with the earthquakes. Just to remember, last year, there were 3 earthquakes above magnitude 6, one about magnitude 6.5 in the country. And this magnitude 6, above 6, they are able to produce some damage. And what we would like to see is what has happened in the past. In this particular map, we have used the shape, these elliptical shapes, to represent the size, the rupture area, which is related to the size of the earthquake. And we could see this very large one to the left, the 1932, it's a magnitude 8.2, and then the 1985 earthquake, a magnitude 8.1, and then other earthquakes that are above magnitude 6.5, and the ones that are a little bit deeper, they are with this symbol that represents like explosions. So we see that most of them are located at the Pacific coast, where the subduction is happening there. Where do we expect earthquakes? Well, we will expect earthquakes along the Pacific coast, and probably where the lines, these red arrows are pointing in this particular region is where there is more likely that we will have these earthquakes. We have 2 recent ones in 2017. This one we will talk a little more later, and this another 8.2 that happened the 7th of September 2017. When we look at the intensity, not at the magnitude, the intensity will measure the type of damage that they will be able to produce. This is the modified Mercalli scale, and it is written in Roman numbers, and everything that is in green will be above intensity 6, in yellow above intensity 7, from 7 to 8, and then in the red color will be intensities that go from 9 to 10, which will be severe damage. And again, you see that there are a lot of these earthquakes that have marked here. This one on top, the mark 1887, a magnitude 7.6, that have 51 persons killed, and a lot of damage, and also damage in some of the cities of the United States. We are going to look at some of these earthquakes, just one slide from each one of these. But remembering, one of the largest earthquakes is this one that was called the San Sixto earthquake in 1787 in March 28, which happened to have a magnitude, an estimated magnitude of 8.6, and produced 11 victims. And the calculation of the size of this earthquake represented in this square is because there are evidence that there was a tsunami, a runoff of the tsunami that moved about 5 kilometers inland, and that left people stranded in trees with 5 meters tall. So that is the way it was determined, this particular magnitude, and that is a very large particular earthquake. This earthquake of Santa Juliana that happened in 1858 in the state of Michoacan, very close to the city of Pátzcuaro, a magnitude 7.6. This is very similar, very similar to the one that happened exactly 1 year ago, the one that we referred a few minutes ago, the one of Turkey and Syria. Syria, it's an earthquake that with the magnitude it was able to produce a lot of damage. We could see the intensities of 9 in this particular area. So even that kind of seismicity can be expected in some of the places. This Bavispe earthquake had a magnitude 7.6, the one that was in the north part border with United States and that produced damage in cities across the border, had again 15 victims. And then we have this January 3rd, 1920 Jalapa earthquake in the state of Veracruz with a magnitude that wasn't very large, but that is the third one in the number of victims that it produced. And why a magnitude, not so large magnitude, will be able to produce? Because it looks like there was a landslide that blocked a river, and then the landslide contained the water, and eventually that dam was destroyed by the pushing of the water, and then it inundated several places. So the question here is, we call it people that were killed because of the inundation, or people that were killed because the inundation happened due to the earthquake. Another important earthquake in it was in 1973, this was a mistake, it's 1957, the Ángel earthquake, because in Mexico City, in this monument called El Ángel, it fell a magnitude 7.8. The epicenter of this earthquake was in the state of Guerrero, but it was called the Ángel earthquake because of the damage that produced, in particular in Mexico. And then we have, sorry, I made a mistake. I copied the same date for the previous earthquake. This was on August 28, 1973, Orizaba earthquake, and this happens to be the second one because of the number of victims, among 540 to 3,000 victims, which was in the central part, again in the state of Veracruz in Mexico. This earthquake in 1979, March 14, called Petatlan earthquake, again, the epicenter was along the Pacific coast and was a magnitude 7.6 and had only 5 victims. And what we are seeing here is the buildings, the main buildings of a university, Universidad Iberoamericana. And this is interesting because this earthquake happened at a few minutes past 5 o'clock in the morning. So there were not students already at the school. If the earthquake had happened at 7 o'clock, then the number of victims could have been very large. And we point out this because it's very important to understand that the damage, the potential damage of an earthquake changes with the day of the week, with the time during the year, and also with the time on the day of the particular earthquake. So one could make an estimation what will be the worst time, for instance, to have an earthquake in a particular area. That's something that has to be understood and evaluated. Then we have the September 1985, September 19, again, an earthquake that happened in Michoacán, 400 kilometers away from Mexico City, with a magnitude 8.1 that killed. These two are official numbers from the government, between 6,000 and 10,000 people killed, and some people claim that there were more numbers. And more recent, in September 7, 2017, this earthquake in Tehuantepec again had a magnitude 8.2 and 45 victims. And a few days later, again, September 19, 2017, a Puebla Morelos earthquake much closer to Mexico City with a magnitude 7.1 that killed 370 victims, 370 people, mainly in Mexico City. And we could see some of the damage in these tall buildings. You could see the damage in the structures. And if we were to use this intensity map and use the National Risk Atlas of Mexico and encompass the areas that goes from intensity 6, we will see that 77 million, about 59% of Mexico's population, live in these areas that are subjected at least to intensity 6. That doesn't mean that it will happen in any earthquake, but we can see that in the duration of 120 years, since 1900, all these areas have been subjected to this type of intensity. So that is something that we have to work doing a recapitulation. We have to understand that it's common to have earthquakes. That is a process that we cannot stop, that there have been large earthquakes and that after some time they will happen again, and that we know more or less where the earthquakes may occur. What is the impact that these earthquakes have in Mexico? Using again that map that we saw a few slides back, there is a particular region. Mexico City is located about here, 300 kilometers from the coast, And there is a region in this place where well, these earthquakes that had happened here, where the arrows are pointing, they showed the damage that happened in Mexico City due to these earthquakes that are far. And they produced this damage because Mexico City was built on a bed lake. And the bed lake it is a very soft ground that when it's moved by the earthquake for a particular distance, like the 1985, 400 kilometers away, that was enough distance so you could barely supposed to feel the earthquake. And in this case, the seismic waves are amplified because of this effect and produce this severe damage. But in this region, there is a seismic gap. We call it the Guerrero seismic gap between Acapulco, which is about here, and Petatlan. In this region, the last earthquake happened in 1911, and there were 4 earthquakes between 1889 and 1911 with magnitude 7.5 to 7.7. And this is the closest distance from this coast to Mexico City. It is interesting because if you go in the trains here in London or in the underground, the space between the train and the platforms is called the gap. And they have a lot of announcements saying, mind the gap, telling us, be careful with the gap between the train and the platform. And we should use that and mind the Guerrero seismic gap, because it's something that eventually could cause us some problems. What could happen in this area? Well, we could have a repetition of 4 of these earthquakes with magnitude 7.5 or 7.7 that could probably be accommodated the way they are shown here. And this will be the best scenario, although these earthquakes have sufficient energy to produce a lot of damage in the close area and also in Mexico City. That will be the best scenario. And another one will be if they all break all together at one time, they will be able to produce an earthquake of magnitude 8. Compared to 1985, what was 8.2, this was 400 kilometers away. An earthquake of magnitude 8 or 8.1 at 300 kilometers is not going to be much larger in amplitude, but what is going to happen is that it's going to last more time, and the duration has an important effect. And there is still one more other possible scenario, that earthquake that happened in 1957, we have already 67 years again of energy accumulation in that area, and that could produce a larger earthquake. That is probably the less probable scenario to happen, but we should be concerned and we should be prepared, not concerned, but more prepared. And what was happening in other areas with similar analysis? In Japan, in this particular area, in the north part, they had identified 5 seismic gaps. And here are the name of the gaps: north of San Rikuoki, where a magnitude 8 earthquake was expected with a very low probability over the next 30 years, which was 0.2 to 10%. And there were others with magnitude 7.7, 80 to 90%, or Fukushima, where the power plant was. And what happens? Well, the nature played us a very important lesson. It put together all these the seismic gaps and transfer all the energy into one, and then it produced this magnitude 9 that had this gigantic tsunami, and we know all the particular effect. In another recent analysis done in 2022, larger subduction earthquakes around the world with magnitude 8.5. Mexico has that one in Oaxaca that we talked at the beginning, the 1878 magnitude 8.6 here. So that's something, again, to be concerned. We leave the point of the earthquakes and what they happen, and we do another analysis that is important to do because the way people see. This is a list of the president that Mexico had since 1884 with Porfirio Diaz, and there is the whole list here until the present government. And you could see that there has not been a time or a term of government, only one, Pedro Lascurain Paredes, where there wasn't a particular earthquake greater than magnitude 6.5. And why that happened? Well, we'll ask what happened, what was the party of this particular person? Well, the problem is that his period lasted only 45 minutes. That is the reason why he didn't have enough time for having an earthquake. And what we want to tell the people is that they don't have to do with the politics, the earthquakes, but they have to do with the duration. In Mexico, the duration of a presidency is 6 years, and 6 years is enough time for the earth to be able to accumulate enough energy and to have an earthquake. Another important question recently, because we have several earthquakes in September, and in September 19 and in September 7, people start asking why the earthquakes were happening in September. And it was just a mere coincidence that the earthquakes happened in September. There is not an explanation. There is nothing particular in September. The number of earthquakes to do this analysis is indeed very small. If we were able to have a record of the earthquakes that had happened in Mexico in the last 2,000 years, we will be able probably to see that pretty much in every month there have been these earthquakes. So it has nothing to do. The earth could tremble at any particular time, and we should be very, very ready and prepared. Mexico has a very important and powerful tool, which is a seismic alert system. And the seismic alert system is composed by four particular requirements: the knowledge of the phenomenon, the measurement and monitoring of the system, the dissemination of the public alert, and the last one, the response of contingency plans. If one of these lines will not work the way it should be, then the alert system will not work. And we will see some of these examples of how this particular device, because of the distance between the coast and Mexico City, we are able to measure the time when the earthquake starts, depending in the place of the earthquake. That's something that is signaled here. And I'm going to ask them to see if they could help me with this video to show you what happened in this particular earthquake in September 7, the magnitude 7.1 that happened a few years ago. And please, Carla, if you could turn it. There we go. You are going to see the map of Mexico, and you are going to be two circles coming from the Pacific area. It's going to start in a few seconds, and that is marking the time the earthquake is going to start in this area. There we go. And then what we see is that this pink color represents the P waves, and this yellow color represents the travel time of the S waves. Here to the right and to the bottom, there is this counter that is measuring the seconds that have elapsed since the beginning of the earthquake. Mexico City is located over here. So we see that there have been about 27, 28, about 30, 33 seconds for the first waves to arrive. And these ones, the S waves and the superficial waves, which are the more destructive waves because they are a group, a train of waves, are moving slowly to Mexico City at about half the speed of the P waves. And by that time, since the beginning that we saw the counter, the alert sound is going on in Mexico City, and people will have, as you could see here, about between 50 and 1 minute if the earthquake happens in this place. So, okay, let's, please you, we move to the presentation again, please, Carla. Thank you. And let me see if, so, as you saw, there is the requirement of knowing where the earthquakes happen, having a network of sensors that are going to be able to detect the important waves, do an estimation of the energy, the magnitude, how big it's going to be, and send an alerting system. But again, if we have not done our homework, preparing and doing drills, things aren't going to work. So this is a plus to having this system. Of course, for the people along the coast, there's not going to be time to be doing that part. Again, showing the location of these earthquakes that we have seen before. And these are the seismic alert system stations, these yellow dots, and the green ones are repeaters for the transmission. And then we see the seismic stations that measure the earthquakes from the national network. And when we look at the whole map in the country, we see that we have covered only the central part, that towards the northwest part of Mexico, and also we have seen that there are earthquakes in the north. We still have some things to do. So how many stations do we need to know? And we think of
I'm sorry, we cannot see your screen. Can you share the presentation again? Sorry.
Let me do. Sorry. Can you see it now?
Yeah, but the sharing in the presentation format.
Okay.
No, not yet.
Now can you see it?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, just briefly, I was just showing the location of the earthquakes, of the seismic alert system stations, the seismic stations to detect earthquakes from the national network. And then when we look at the whole map, we see that we have covered only just part of the country. We still need to do a lot of coverage towards the north. And we were saying that if we were to compare, for instance, Japan, when the 1995 Kobe earthquake happened, they had very few stations, about 250 stations. And then a few years after that, they just moved to have more than close to 1,700 stations. And if we compare the size of Japan and Mexico in this subduction zone, we would see that Japan will fit in this region where we have a lot of earthquakes. So we need more stations. That doesn't mean that having more stations we will be able to detect. We will be able to know more about the earthquakes. And just to give some numbers, China has about 10,000 people working on seismic aspects, about one person for every 130,000 inhabitants. And at that rate, Mexico should have 1,000 people in seismology doing this work, but we are at the most about 180 people. So we could say that we expect major earthquakes, that earthquakes have nothing to do with the politics, that it doesn't shake only in September, that we have a national seismic service, and also that we have a seismic alert. Another aspect that we have to understand is what happens with the buildings and how could we reduce the risk that happens. The risk is related to the vulnerability and the hazard, the phenomena. We cannot do anything about the phenomena, but if we reduce the vulnerability, we are going to reduce the risk. And that is the answer. Then what is that we're supposed to do? And sometimes we try to place the blame on somebody who builds the seismic vulnerability. We look at geologists and researchers, and the answer is that it is the ignorance. It is not knowing exactly what is going to happen when there is an earthquake and where the earthquakes occur. And the same will be how to reduce seismic vulnerability. It's not kindness or nature or organization, will be again knowledge. This is something that we can do and we need to do. Like what we show in this picture, the risk exists because there is a hazard. If the house wasn't there, then nothing will happen. But having that house, it then becomes vulnerable to this particular hazard, the landslide, and then we build the risk. So there's something that we need to do and have this and strengthen our structures and evaluate the age of the buildings when they were constructed, keep the maintenance on them, and establish security zones. Probably you have seen this particular movie, Sully, that was 15 years ago, when Captain Sully had to make a very quick decision. Within 2-3 minutes, he decided that he was going to land at the Hudson, but there was not enough time and enough speed to be able to arrive in one of the two airports that were available there. And that's something that we need to have in what we do. We have to already rehearse all the possible decisions to have the right amount of time, to have in split seconds where is the place where I'm supposed to be covered and all these things. Or we have the other effect, which is the interstellar effect, where an hour equals 7 years, and the mentality is that, well, probably there's going to be an earthquake, but because they say that there are not many earthquakes, it probably will be next year or it will be in September, and we think we have a lot of time. So we choose to have either or solar effect or interstellar effect, and that is very important. We need to know that the buildings move. This is a model done for an earthquake, a building of 20 stories during the Kobe earthquake, and we could see mainly in this lower part, this moving around of the building being seen from above. That is like dancing. Buildings are not supposed to be dancing, and then it produces a lot of damages. And also, if you look at this particular figure, you could see that there are some parts of the building that move very little, like here and here, and then the roof, for instance, moves much more, and also in other areas here. By identifying these particular areas where there is more movement, then we should be able to place important objects or other things in those places so they are safe. This is an example of damage in the 1985 earthquake, and when we look at this picture, we may think that it was totally a bad design, and the answer is not. This is a building that performed according to the specifications of the builder, and they have these columns of concrete, and then can use these walls to try to contain the lateral motion of the building. And these walls breaking in this X pattern, they are being stressed, and they are assimilating some of the forces and containing the building. And what the code tells us is that the building should not collapse. And in this particular case, we could see that the building didn't collapse. It got a lot of damage. So we are supposed to know what kind of building we are in and what is the possible damage that it could sustain in an earthquake, and then take decisions if we should reinforce the building to avoid that we have this damage. This was one of the effects that happened very frequently during the earthquake in 1985, which was pounding. You could see this earthquake, this building that dates from about 1900s, and then this one in the mid-70s. They are very different, and they start just pounding each other, and the stress accumulation is in this place, and then enough energy is transferred to this building, and some of these floors collapse. So that's was one of the main damages. The other one was this, when the building is used for other purpose. If this building was designed to be for family occupancy, and we use it for storing some of the woods, very heavy woods, we are altering the efficiency and the capacity of the building. And again, this looks with a lot of damage, but still it is standing. It, according to the law, it would be the building, it's fine, and it kept its purpose. When we look at effects of other buildings like this in China, again, we see when we're looking for some of the columns here, we don't easily recognize columns, only the ones in the corner, and we see that this building lost a particular floor in that area. This is Japan, again in the Kobe earthquake, where the first floor is called the soft floor, used for the storing cars, for parking, and then it becomes very soft because it has columns, but it doesn't have walls to contain the motion. And we can see that the building is well designed, but it lost the particular first floor. In this recent earthquakes, Wichita and East Tepec, we can see the construction. These are for the large earthquake, these adobe walls, very thick, very heavy, not very tall structures, but the weight of them and the collapsing could produce a lot of injured people. And what is interesting is that this structure, also from the same place, it is with newer materials. It looks kind of nice, but what we don't see, it is some type of structure. We don't see a concrete column here, and then it's very common that they keep just building more and more on top of a structure that wasn't designed to have this many buildings, many stories. For the case of Mexico City, the 19th of September 2017, we see that they were the damaged buildings, severe damage, the red ones, medium damage, green, and then yellow. They are located in a particular area. And again, we can see these images that if somebody see this damage in the house, they will think that the house is almost ready to collapse. And again, this wall contained a lot of the possible damage. And we see when we look at the plan, when we look at the fish tank, and we look at the image being here, that none of them fell. But the wall performed the way it was supposed to be, the same as here. These walls have to be replaced. They don't have to be just fixed with some kind of glue. They have to be replaced, and then things will be working fine. Again, this building that dates from the late 50s, we are going to see that is the first soft floor, and after the earthquake, we see the damage. It loses completely that particular first floor. We see this other image, it lost completely this floor. And again, this other one in the corner was subjected to the pounding effect. And we could see it very clearly here. We see that at this level, this yellow house, above the impact area, there is no damage, but below that, we have a lot of damage in this particular region. That's the point where we see it. Then other structures that were designed to have only no more than 3 stories, more stories were built, and then after the earthquake, they completely collapsed because they didn't abide to the regular code. And when we look at different places in the downtown area, we could see a lot of anomalies in the construction. We could see that they are continuum columns, and the walls are different sizes and shapes, and all these things are allow these structures to have a strange behavior in an earthquake, like this other structure that looks more like a Disneyland type of building, and this one that looks like a nice building, but in this whole wall, nothing should be done, no windows, and people start just making windows or start modifying the windows in the front, taking some of the structural things in that part. This one was an old building in 2013. They remodel it, they make it look really nice. The prices was low, and then in 2017, because they didn't modify the structural part, collapsed. What not to do? We are not supposed to put. We are supposed to put enough iron so these structures perform the way they have to be. We could see these different type of damages, not only in Mexico, different. And look at these ones when you have the columns first circular and then you change it, that you rather have them in a square. Everything of this counts. Again, here we start with a column that is very narrow and very small for the size. And also now with all the cabling that we use, we easily cut the columns of the beams, and that's something that is not should be done because they are structural parts of the buildings. And like this one, they decided to make an extension of the house, and that's supposed not to be done. And again, here, this foundation is not the best thing to do, and this may be environmentally correct to use of the tires, but it's not supposed to be done. And again, this is very precarious. And again, this is a very strange type of design. And this was in Shanghai, in China. We see that we lost the foundation of this building, and the whole building just collapses completely. What should be done? Well, we should reinforce with beams and with a lot of iron, like for instance, this old building that has more than 80 years in the downtown of age in downtown Mexico City, that is being reinforced and made much more stronger. And that is also in the regulation, the distance that has to be in between the buildings. Everything should be there. There are different ways of reinforcing the buildings. You could see that the columns are not quite strong or sturdy. This building was heavily damaged in the 1985, and this reinforcement was done afterwards. Some of the hospitals that are being reinforced, again, this other hospital, this structure is a reinforcement, and then more steel or some isolators in the base in order to arrest the strong motion of the buildings will allow us to perform. Another thing that is very useful is to mark the cracks. Sometimes when there's an earthquake, people start looking with a lot of detail on the walls, and they find a lot of cracks, but there are some old cracks. So we need to measure them and to put the date when this when was that crack when it appeared. And in some of them, we may have some notice about the warning if it's a reinforced building. It is also important to know where do we live. Again, this map, we were showing the buildings that were damaged. And when we put the seismic zonation of Mexico City on top of them, we see that we are in the soft part of the zone. We need to tattoo which part. This was the lake that was before the city was completely constructed. And now we could see that this part, from this green, this darker green, brown, and red, this is the soft part, which amplifies quite a lot the amplitude of the earthquakes. How could we know this? Well, when people say that if there is a truck, a heavy truck, passing on the street and the building moves as if there is an earthquake, or if you look at the floor and the floor is like this, or if you look at the separation of the buildings or this other building, then it is the structures are telling you that you are living in an area with ground amplification. There is this atlas where you could find exactly where is your location. And another aspect that is important that we review is the myths. There is a lot of myths behind the earthquakes, like some people that will be able to predict the occurrence of an earthquake, and people are more prone to believe them than to believe the scientists, and honest answer will be, well, there is a large possibility that we have an earthquake, but we don't know when it will happen. People say that when the dogs start barking, there will be an earthquake, but no, dogs are smarter than that. They are used to help us find people, and they know where to stop. And other people think about the position of the planets, and when there is an alignment of planets, and relate that position with more earthquakes. And also recently there has been these particular lights after an earthquake, and this is not the effect of luminescence, but this is mainly of the moving and touching of some of the electrical cables, and if there is some type of fog, we will have these effects. So we are not supposed to be looking for an explanation if the moon is full, if the sky looks red, if the national team loses, only in September or in the morning. The answer is that this is false. The earthquakes, as we could see, they could happen anytime. Another thing that we need to think about is the insurance. There is only 5% of the homes that are insured against earthquakes, and the prices change, of course, depending on where are you located. Getting an insurance, and we need to know what it will pay for. It will not reconstruct the whole house as a new one. It will do as the initial structure was designed. So we need to know that the behavior of the structures is diverse. It is important to recognize the structural vulnerability. There is something that we could work with, and we must know our seismic zone. We need to know about the myths. We need to know about the importance of the earthquake insurance. And we have another aspect, the social behavior. We need to perform drills. Only by repeating what to do in case of an earthquake, we will be able to have the right answer when there is an earthquake. There are official drills, used to be once a year. They are trying to do them more often than that, and people become organized when the seismic alert system starts just going on. And we need not only to do it when the federal government or the government tell us to do, but also with our families. We need to identify the risk and safety zones. We have to map our safety routes. We need to be ready to take the best decision and make drills. For instance, in this bedroom, it looks nice, but if all these frames fall on top of us, or if we have, for instance, this bookshelf that moves and in an earthquake and falls and don't let us get out of the house, we need to look at all the appliances that we have now that we usually connect to only one block, because then we could have a fire on top of the earthquake, and it would be a problem. And we need to consider the elderly people. They need more time. They need the special resources to be moved, and what to do with them, where to place them, what should be done. That is something very, very important. As we say, we need to know the routes with or without light, where to move and where is the exit and how are we going to get out. We need to do drills, and more drills. We need to talk to the family about what are the role that everyone has to play, and we need to be informed. There is a lot of information about how to prepare, how to perform, and what are we supposed to check. They are done in different languages. In Mexico, there are more than 65 languages in Mexico. This is in Nahuatl, for instance, about the earthquakes, and what to do and what to know. And how do we react to earthquakes? We are going to show a few brief videos where we are going to see this person is talking in a TV, and you are going to hear the radios telling that there is an earthquake and say that everyone should be calm, but he doesn't give us the best example. You are going to notice how
Claro, el
he gets
desempleo
more
está entre el
nervous
7,
and
8,
start giving his
9%
position.
de la población económicamente activa. Al parecer está viendo en este momento un temblor. Hay un movimiento sísmico, hay que tenerlo con mucha tranquilidad.
Everyone should be calm.
Estamos sintiendo en este momento un movimiento sísmico, un temblor. Tranquilos, hay que tomarlo con mucha calma.
Everyone should
Está
be
largo un
calm.
poco,
It's very long,
está larguito.
very long.
Sí, sí.
Then he started
Pero no
saying,
vemos más.
right. So he's not giving the best advice. And this is in Costa Rica. They are talking about a particular book, and you are going to notice when they realize that there is an earthquake and what is the reaction of them.
Pero el problema, tiene una depresión fuerte, es una depresión bipolar, me han dicho, porque tiene un año de estar con un psiquiatra. Desde que vive con su actual, está temblando fuertísimo en este momento.
Güey, puta.
Oh my God.
Calma,
Oh my
calma,
God.
calma,
Oh my God.
calma, 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 calma.
He just managed to say calm, 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 but he doesn't do any instruction,
Y la mamá,
and it's not the best thing. And in this one, we're going to see what happens in this particular office. There's the earthquake. He said there's moving this person, this man that is looking at his cellular phone, and at the time he says calm to everyone again. And then this woman in the bathroom, she decides to go to a better place, a safe place. She moves to this particular ward, and stays there, and everyone follows her. He gives instructions about the TV. But he said that the coffee maker, somebody should go and grab the coffee maker. Coffee is always important. So they decided to go and drink the coffee. And then he they keep the same there. Then finally they say, but it's okay. Everyone moves to a different place. He comes back for the cellular phone, and that's it. In this one, there is the seminar. They are talking in the seminar, and then the alarm starts sounding, the seismic alarm system. It is very subtle until when it starts, and they don't know what to do. They eventually start taking action, but we will see.
Más bien, yo digo que los han hecho.
Then the seismic alarm.
Establece la Constitución.
They say the motion is not moving.
que las mujeres.
You see, this man in green, he has to put his hand to the wall because you cannot walk. The reason to stay in a place, in a safe zone, is because you cannot walk during the earthquake. You will see how he moved. And it's difficult with the last straight. And they made this person that probably the picture was standing there by the truck. And the last one, this is Broso, a newsman that they start telling him that they tell him that there is an earthquake.
No, está temblando.
Está temblando ahorita ya. Están temblando. Bueno, todos los que nos están siguiendo, vayan inmediatamente a las puertas,
He started telling them that everyone should go to the doors, to the emergency exit, to do it with calm, rapidly with calm.
Así que ahorita con gran calma, pero con buen paso hacia las puertas de su casa, vayan bajando los edificios, no por los elevadores, por las puertas, por las a las banquetas de sus casas.
Cuidado con el metrobús.
Cuidado con el tráfico, con los cables eléctricos, con el metrobús que no se detiene ni en un tsunami la chingadera.
Well, you can see that we don't perform well. That this video shows that despite having drills and despite having earthquakes and despite having all these things, we still need to do more drills. We still need to put more attention to the safe zones. What are we supposed to be doing? How to react immediately in order to do the right thing. Just very quickly, in less than 2 minutes, what to do before an earthquake, during an earthquake, and after an earthquake. We need to know in what seismic zone we live. We need to know what was the year of the construction of our structure. We need to look at objects that could collapse and damage us or impede our easy exit. Things that could open, like all these things in the kitchen that we're going to need. You don't want to go, it's going to be too complicated to go to a supermarket. What we need to do with the water heater, that because it has gas, but also because it has water, that will be very useful. So we need to attach it to a wall to avoid that it falls. In order to avoid fires, we need to know where to shut the water and the electricity. We need to do something with the windows to avoid that the windows will break. We need to have some money because the ATMs are not going to be able to work. Communications, we are not going to have this wonderful gadget, which is the mobile phone. So how are we going to communicate with the people? Before the earthquake, we have to have a kit of things that are very important next to us. We need to have, for instance, these LED lamps hanging from the wall, from the door. We need to talk to the people. We need to put in a USB all the information that is important and having to be different places. We need to have an emergency backpack with all these things, water, medicine, pictures of the family. We need to look for somebody, for the pets, candles, lighter, etc., etc. What to do with the containers, and during an earthquake, to talk about the anguish and the fear, what to do during an earthquake. We should not run, but we should do it, move fast and stay calm. The earthquake could produce some of the noise which the building starts just moving, and we may think that the building is going to collapse. Could be something that may happen. Not to be caught in an elevator, to be able to hide in the right place, to look upward and check for things that could collapse from other buildings. If we're in a car, what to do? Be far from the lightning poles. If we're in a movie, a theater, in churches, or in stadiums, if we're in a store, what would be a safe exit, and what to do? What to do in case of an earthquake if we get trapped? To have something to start banging with metal, to put our shoes, to turn the gas and the water, do not light matches. Do not use the phone to start just talking a lot, just to be brief, and then give the best information. Do not spread rumors. And with this, we can predict earthquakes, but they will occur. It is important to know the seismic zone. We need to know the date the construction of our property. We take constructive measurements if necessary in our home. It is important to react to the sound of the seismic alert, to discuss the earthquakes with the family, with the friends, with the colleagues, check the cost of an earthquake insurance, and if it's necessary, to carry out frequently family and official drills. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. What a vertiginous and scary talk, but very, very evocative and very precise about the things that happen, the things that we need to know. And also, I was thinking many things in terms of education, the need for professional seismographers and seismic stations, as you were saying, but also the need for the general population to be aware of how to react, how to look after other people, how to look after themselves, and all those things that we think are never going to happen, but we know that they will. We really know that they will. So we have some time for some questions or commentaries. If anyone wishes to ask a question, you may raise your hand and do it directly, or you may also address your questions to the UNAM UK account. You may write them down in the chat box, and you can also use that, address the questions to UNAM UK. And we already have a question from YouTube about the brecha sísmica de Tehuantepec. I guess the gap. I really enjoyed your comparison with Mind the Gap, and it is very, very scary. So can you speak about the seismic gap in Tehuantepec and its potential, please?
Yes, in Tehuantepec, the region where this 2017 September 7 earthquake happened, this is also a place where people were expecting, or we were expecting, a large earthquake. And it was a surprise when we look at the magnitude 8.2 and that it didn't fill the gap. I mean, it was a very large earthquake with a very complex rupture area, but still that particular area remains a zone. It is very difficult to establish. For instance, we've been betting on Guerrero Gap since many years ago, and nature is so clever that when you seem to be preparing one region, you have a lot of earthquakes in other areas. So what to do in order to understand them? In that case, we enter into the situation where we need more information. We need more instrumentation. The problem is that we need to do instrumentation also on the sea, which is complicated. It has been only recently on Guerrero because of our cooperation with Japan. But we need to know more to understand the area, but also we need to prepare the people. So it has to be hand by hand. The structures, we know that there are a lot of old structures, and some are precarious structures. And so there's a lot of things that can be done in order to avoid that a large earthquake, that we cannot stop the large earthquake and we cannot predict it, but that the impact of the earthquake will be small.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there other questions or comments? I don't know if the people in the audience have experienced an earthquake. I know many Mexicans have, we all have. And if you experienced an earthquake for the 1st time as an adult, the effect is is very, very powerful. Especially the question. Okay, I'm going to go back to my original idea about education. Is there any action that is being undertaken by, say, the National Seismological Center or regarding education, both with children and with professionals like yourself? Is there any promotion of the specific awareness that Mexicans need to have regarding earthquakes, and then we need people to be trained with geophysicists like yourself? Is there any kind of activity to promote the study of earthquakes and everything that is implied by them?
Yes, it is an important question because through education we could get done a lot of things. The National Seismic Network, the people there train professors that are professors in preparatorias and in seismology. They give courses that last, if I'm not wrongly, if I'm not mistaken, more than a year and a half. Every Saturday, they train them, and the idea is to train these professors, and they could replicate this information to train the students, and also maybe to interest them in the aspects of seismology. But one of the things that is complicated is what I pointed out very briefly: the diversity in our country on the lenguas indígenas nacionales, native languages, national native languages, because in many areas they have to be or they have to be used. And then the problem there is that even if we write this information, because we can get somebody that knows how to write Zapoteco, for instance, and I was very surprised when they told we decided Zapoteco, and they say, what version of Zapoteco you want? I said, version. Said there are 4. And that just tells you how little I know about these languages. So the task is complicated, but I think it has to be done. It has to move, and it has to move with the kids, because the kids will replicate these things. If we teach them, I'm sure they are going to go to their families and say, we have the homework to do a drill with the family and to write a report. That would be just wonderful, because they will start questioning all these things and to be better prepared and know what to do in case of a large earthquake, with or without a seismic alert zone.
Thank you. We have another question from Alfredo Garcia Velasco. From a probabilistic perspective, what intensity measures should we choose that are efficient and sufficient for record selection? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I hope you do.
Well, in the case of the Guerrero seismic gap, remember, mind the gap, we have this selection of 4 earthquakes of between magnitude 7.5 and 7. And then if they break all together, will be a magnitude 8. And if we add the 1957, will be more than magnitude 8.2 or above. So officially, the federal government assumed the magnitude 8 to be the working magnitude for that earthquake. So one has to choose. And also, we have to remember that now in every drill, they choose different earthquakes for different regions in Mexico. Something that is interesting, because in the north, they selected the Bavispe earthquake, the one that happened in Sonora. And then in Chiapas, they will pick up an earthquake in Chiapas, and in Guerrero, another earthquake. So we start getting things done in the proper way. For instance, one of the suggestions would be to have drills at night, because things are very different, or in a rainy day, things like that. And probably the best thing is use not the maximum magnitude or intensity, but an average and above average. there's no much room to be optimistic there, but to try to be more realistic.
Yes, and I was also thinking about the international aspect of earthquakes. I know there is a great show of solidarity whenever there is an earthquake. I know people, teams, specialist teams from Mexico travel around the world to provide their specialist help. No? For example, in Turkey and Syria last year, or in Japan or in China. And the same happens when there is an earthquake in Mexico. Are there networks, international networks that communicate not only during the earthquake, but throughout the year for the purposes of sharing technology, of sharing all the information that has been gathered in one country or another? How does international communication work? And how do international offices just like ours can help to promote those networks?
Yes, usually the groups that get together and exchange ideas and knowledge are the ones that belong to the government, like the civil protection, because they use the legal channels to go abroad through the Department of Foreign Affairs. But I think that's something that we probably should start, and that's something that we lived in September 19, 2017, is that the university community, they were eager to help. They right away wanted to help. The problem is that they didn't know how to do it. From the School of Engineering and from the School of Architecture, they wanted to go right away to the site where there were collapses and say, take us. And that was something that we identified and say, you need to have some type of preparation. It is not that simple, because otherwise we will endanger your life, and we could probably perform in not the right way. So when there is no earthquake, I think every aspect of our university, even the legal aspect, for instance, people that lost their houses or in buildings in these earthquakes, they have no papers. And to start a process, the government say, show me your papers. And say, my papers are buried with my house. So in that aspect, the students of law will be able to tell you where to look for or how to help. And of course, students from medicine will be able to continue helping people that is in need of help. Every discipline will be able to help in somewhere. And in that case, technology, for instance, like the type of technology that could be here in the United Kingdom, that probably could be shared through our universities to say, we're going to deal with this earthquake. Everyone wanted to help in Turkey and Syria. Everyone sends help. The question is, who's still helping Syria and Turkey right now? And the answer probably, unfortunately, will be probably nobody now. So this happens and dies very quickly. So we need to continue. And I believe that through our universities, through our students, probably we could do a lot, and not only for earthquake, for any other type of particular events that may occur in other areas. Here in UK, we don't have earthquakes, but we have snowstorms and we have floods, and there is a lot of flooding in Mexico, and in that area they could exchange information and knowledge and make groups to help internationally when these events happen, like what happened in Chile. Fires is very complicated. These huge fires that took a lot in Chile, how do we help? And there's, what I would say is that there's a lot to be done there.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, if there are no more questions or comments, yes, we give you a big round of applause It was an incredible talk, Carlos. We are very, very grateful to you for this. And well, thank you to everybody who has attended, and we invite you to look at other events presented by UNAM UK, and we will say goodbye for now. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll be seeing you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ana Elena.